I didn't believe her because of the way she talked about it. I didn't think she had it in her, really.
Later that day, Aileen and her girlfriend piled all their possessions into Mallory's car, abandoned their room, and moved into a new place.
Then Aileen took the car, methodically wiped clean of fingerprints, and dumped the things that were in the car, covered them with sand, and then dumped the car at yet another site.
Police would find Mallory's abandoned car the next day, and his corpse 2 weeks later in Volusia County. But with no leads, the case remained cold. Tyra never went to the police to report her lover's confession and stayed by Wuornos' side.
I thought at that time that, okay, she has all the frustration out of her system for whatever reason she hated society, that she'll be okay. But obviously she wasn't. Obviously it was just the turning point, and she figured she got away with it once, she would keep doing it.
After a 6-month break, Wuornos would strike 3 more times, robbing and killing David Spears, Charles Carskadden, and Peter Sims in much the same way.
She would either find her victims when she picked them up as a John, or she would stand by abandoned cars on the side of the road and motorists would stop and pull over thinking that she was a female in distress.
Once she decided this was going to be a victim, ascertaining that they had the cash that she needed, she was all ready to go.
Some serial killers include rape or torture. In this case, Aileen included robbery. She was making money.
She would go home with these bills of money and wave them at Tyra and say, look, now I can pay the rent. Look, now we can party. Everything's going to be all right.
I was afraid of her after a while, that if I tried to leave, that she would, you know, do something.
The string of murders baffled the police. At first, they weren't even certain they were dealing with one killer.
The fact that we did not catch her is simply because she was unique in her style, that she was a female, that she did leave the body away from the car, and it made it hard to put it all together.
On July 4th, 1990, Wuornos had a close call when she and Tyra were involved in an accident while driving a car she had stolen from her 4th victim.
We were riding out through the country. Guess I was going a little fast around a turn and rolled the car.
The women were unharmed, but when help arrived, Aileen realized the accident could mean trouble.
Aileen then wrenched the rear license plate off with her bare hands and threw it into the bushes.
When one of the fire rescue people approached the female was belligerent to her and they ran off.
I probably had my suspicions about that it could be a vehicle of someone that she murdered. But I never questioned her about it because, like I said, you know, you don't want to make her mad.
Police quickly learned that the car was registered to Peter Sims, who had been reported missing 3 weeks earlier. But they were unable to track down the 2 women, who had already hitchhiked their way back to Daytona.
A drawing was done at that time of the 2 of them. The police were trying to weigh the benefits of getting the drawings out there against the fear that it would tip off the women and they would run. So they were in one local paper and that was it at that time, and nothing happened.
Over the next 5 months, Wuornos would kill another 3 men. It was now becoming apparent to Florida authorities that they had a serial killer on their hands. The victims were found in 5 different counties, all shot with a .22 caliber handgun. Desperate for leads, police decided to release the sketches of the 2 women statewide.
When the composites are put in the newspaper, we start getting a lot of calls from the Daytona Beach area, from the Port Orange area, indicating that they were seen.
At that point, Tyra fled the state, heading north to Pennsylvania to stay with her sister, and leaving Aileen to fend for herself.
I knew I had nothing to do with any of this, and I had to leave. It's like I have to get away from her. You know, she's not going to ruin my life.
Aileen was on her own, desolate. She didn't know the game was up, but she was out of steam, she was out of money, she was out of energy, she was out of strength, she was heartbroken because Tyra had left her.
In late December, detectives discovered pawn shop records of items Wuornos had stolen from her victims. It was the break police had been looking for.
She was identified through her thumbprint on the pawn shop ticket.
Police now knew they were looking for Aileen Wuornos. They followed her for about 2 days. Then they made their move.
We learned that the bar where she's been hanging out for the last 24 hours, they're going to have a large pig roast and a biker gathering. So with her history, we're concerned that she's going to end up on the back of a bike and be off and we'll never find her again.
On January 9th, 1991, at this Port Orange bar, aptly named the Last Resort, Aileen Wuornos was finally arrested. She would soon find herself caught between wanting to fight her case and needing to protect the woman she loved.
Tyra, listen, you just go ahead and do what you gotta do, okay?
Between November 1989 and November 1990, Aileen Wuornos killed 7 men along the highways of Central Florida.
Aileen was a predator just like any other serial killer. She was out there to take lives for her own personal gain.
With Wuornos now in custody, investigators turned their attention to finding her lover, Tyra Moore. They quickly tracked her down near Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania.
Well, I was very cooperative. Anything I knew, I told him. I knew I didn't have anything to hide, because I knew I was nowhere around her when she did any of this.
We really had no evidence that she was knowingly participating in the robberies or the killings.
Tyra did confess to knowing about at least one of the murders, yet the prosecution decided not to charge her with any crime. But that leniency would come with a catch. Moore would have to help the investigators ensnare her former lover.
They arranged me to write a letter to Lee and give her the phone number of the motel I was staying at so she could call me, and she did.
Their first call came on January 14th.
Hey, Ty?
Yeah.
What are you doing?
Nothing. What the hell are you doing?
Nothing. I'm sitting here in jail.
Yeah, it's what I heard.
I wanted to know where she was going with it. Is she going to try to pin this on me, or is she going to, confess?
Tyra told Aileen that police were harassing her family.
There's been officials up at my parents' house asking some questions.
Uh-oh.
And I'm getting scared.
I think what happened, there was pictures in the newspaper.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a case of mistaken identity.
As the calls continued, Tyra became more insistent that the police were after her and her family. Wuornos began to suspect she was being tricked.
Listen, I gotta ask you something. Is there anybody in that room?
No, just me.
What?
What?
Is there anybody in your room?
No.
But over time, as she sat in jail and listened to her seemingly desperate lover, Aileen became less suspicious and more determined to protect Tyra.
I don't know whether I should keep on living or if I should...
No, Ty, listen.
What?
You go ahead and let them know what you need to know. If you want to know or anything, you're innocent. Listen, if I have to confess, I will.
On January 16th, 1991, Aileen took matters into her own hands.
There's no confessing. There's nothing in the There is one.
For more than 3 hours, Aileen sat in a jailhouse confession room talking to investigators, smoking, laughing, crying, spilling her story to protect her lover.
It was a rambling, obviously spontaneous, sometimes somewhat disconnected dissertation.
I'm telling you from the bottom of my heart, I'm telling you the truth about everything. I mean, I can't be any truthful.
Throughout, Wuornos blatantly disregarded the advice of the public defender assigned to represent her.
I told you, I don't care if you're here or not, I just want to let them understand that Tyra is very innocent. I don't want an innocent person hurt.
Wuornos admitted to killing 7 men, though she claimed to have done so in self-defense.
They got violent with me, and I decided to defend myself. I wasn't going to let them beat the
In the end, Aileen Wuornos was charged with 6 counts